Welcome to some new r/malicious compliance stories, where people comply to the letter but not the spirit of a request. I hope you had a great day. Thanks for all the likes and comments on the last video. If you would like to support this channel, please hit the like button and consider subscribing if you enjoy the content. And now, let's start with the first story. It's called Do Not Adjust It. Working in customer service is a mixture of do it the way it needs to be to get done and do what you are told. In this case, my manager and I use compliance to make a point to the finance department. Okay, we'll do as we are told, even if it makes our company look incompetent to our biggest customers. When we migrated to a new point of sale system, I noticed that the credit terms showing up on the order confirmations for one of our biggest customers weren't right. The net terms on their purchase orders did match what we had on contract, but didn't match what was showing up on our order entry and confirmation screens for their customer account. At first, it was as simple as correcting the credit terms on the orders in our system to match what we have on contract with the customer. We informed finance that we saw some wrong credit terms showing up on our orders. We thought this was a fine workaround until our electronic system was updated with the correct credit terms. This was met with a strong no. Your department does not adjust credit terms on orders. You will ask the customer to update their purchase orders, and you will not enter any of their orders until their POs match what our system shows. Mind you, this is for one of our biggest customers, tens of millions of dollars annually. So my manager came to the conclusion that we need some grease, so it's time to make the wheels squeak. Cue Malicious Compliance. Seeing that finance wasn't actually updating our system and instead ordered us to reject the customer orders until they changed the credit terms on their orders, my manager gave me a directive. In writing. He knew it was respectful to not throw me under the bus for this. Your instructions are to reject the customer's orders and request they change their credit terms to what the system says it should be. I grinned, he grinned. I knew what was gonna happen. He used me like the tool I am, and it was 100% consensual. I started rejecting all of their orders, and I asked their buyers to update the credit terms on their purchase orders to what was, frankly, wildly wrong terms and not close to what we had on contract with them. It wasn't long before a deluge of irate emails came pouring in from the customer, angrily demanding why we were making them change credit terms. How there were absolutely no negotiations held about changing credit terms, asking why an order entry agent was essentially dictating major financial matters, and how this was widely unprofessional of us. When word got around that some lowly customer service agent was telling our customers to change their credit terms, I just showed the email saying my boss told me to do it. My boss then pulled out his emails and said, "Finance department told me that they wanted my department to do this." Wouldn't you know, less than a day later, the customer's credit terms were updated in the system to what they should be. The next story is called I Said Okay. A few years ago, I was moving my business to a new location that needed 6 months to be built out. I informed our current alarm company a few months before the move that we'd be moving services, which for whatever reason they couldn't do. I had to open a new site on the account, and then I could close the old one after the move. Sure, that's fine. They got all the details and sold me the newer system that would be connected to the internet so I could monitor it from my phone. Sounds great. So they told me they could install it next week, but I had to have the internet set up and running before they could do it. I informed them the phone lines and internet would not be installed until later, as I didn't want to pay for services we were not using, and that I would let them know when that was installed so they could come out for the installation. Everything satisfied, the call was complete. A few days later, I started getting weekly phone calls from their installers, telling me they were on their way to the new site to do the install. To which I had to go through the explanation of the internet won't be installed until later and that I would call them and let them know when that was done. Each time they said, "Oh, okay, sounds good, we'll wait to hear from you." But then the following week it would repeat again. On the 6th week I got the same weekly call from the alarm company installer. "Hi, this is Jim. Just letting you know we'll be at your site in about 30 minutes to do the install." So this time I said, "Okay." We hung up and I went back to work, which was happening at our current location. No workers or work was happening at the new site on this day. About 30 minutes later, I got a call from Jim saying the doors are locked and nobody is answering. I said I know, nobody is there today, and the internet won't be installed until next month anyway. At this point, he starts getting agitated with me and asks why I scheduled an install for today and why I told him I'd be there when he called. I explained, I didn't. You said you'd be there in 30 minutes. I said okay. Amazingly, the call stopped and I called them a couple of weeks before the move and they came out and installed it just fine. The third story is called Stop Acting Like That. 3 years ago, I started working in a company where my manager was a jerk. He would insult us and blame any problem on his employees, trying to get them against each other. I got burnt out after about a year of 10-hour days and weekends of doing tasks that were greatly above my paycheck and completely different from what I was promised as I got there. So I gave my resignation. My manager thought I was useless, as he often said about anyone but himself. So instead of trying to find a new employee, he decided he would have taken over my role, to the horror of all my coworkers. The only problem? I was the only person who knew his way around the company ERP program, and I would have to teach him my 1.5 years experience in 2 weeks. As I started to teach him, he got more and more frustrated and terrified by the amount of workload that was coming his way. He started to insult me even more, but I was still trying to teach him the best I could for the sake of my coworkers. All of this until the first day of my last week. I was pointing out a mistake he was making every time he did a certain task, and he replied, screaming at me, "Shut the heck up. I don't need you to act as a freaking teacher." So I didn't. I just sat beside him for the next and last 5 days, not teaching him anything. Every time he couldn't remember how to do something, I would jokingly shee him up, telling him I was sure he could come up with the solution himself if he focused enough. When problems would come up that I still didn't have the time to solve, I would tell him, "I don't know how this thing happened. It never happened to me. You should contact the client service. They taught me everything when I needed." The peak of this was when he got so frustrated that he started to repeatedly slam his mouse against the desk and then sat there staring blankly at the screen for 10 minutes. I had to actually keep myself from laughing in his face. After I left, I spent the next 2 months getting called almost daily by my ex-colleagues. They needed help finding files or solving problems that they couldn't find an answer for. Things that I didn't have the time to teach them, as I had to stay with the manager all the time. The last story is called Rules Are Rules. Around 20 years ago, I got a job at a local factory that manufactured aluminum windows and doors for some very large new builds. I started out as a general laborer, but within 3 years had worked my way up to fitter/manufacturer. Then the firm invested a huge amount of money in a new CNC machine. I was selected to be one of the operators. I was sent to Germany from the UK to be taught how to run it. It was a real head scrambler to start with, but eventually I figured it out and loved the job. Once it was installed and running smoothly, the company was able to deal with much bigger contracts, so naturally took them on. In order to fulfill all the work, I had to ensure the machine worked every minute of the working day possible. My hours were 8 to 5. I would arrive at work at 7:30 and spend the next 30 minutes firing up all the computers, turning on the machine and running it through all the setup procedures to make sure it was ready to go. Then I would walk across to the main factory at 8 o'clock to clock in. However, one day I had a small issue with the machine, which took a few minutes to fix, so by the time I got to the clock-in machine, it was 8:04. I really didn't think anything of it until I got my payslip that week. It was 15 minutes short, so I went to see my manager. He looked at the payslip and said company policy was 3 minutes late clock-in allowed only. Over that time is an automatic 15-minute deduction. But he knew it was a genuine reason for the late clock-in, so would speak to the payroll department and get it sorted. They, however, said, "Tough luck. Rules are rules." So from then on, I arrived at 7:30 and sat and drank coffee until 7:55. I then walked over to clock in and only then started my setup. That 2.5 hours a week amounted to a large amount of lost production. The teams of fitters began to run out of product after about a week. At that point, the big boss got involved. He realized immediately that he could not ask me to go back to doing what I did before. So he offered me 30 minutes a day at overtime rate. Well, why not? I was there anyway. That 1 minute extra on the clock cost him 2.5 hours a week at time and a half for the next 2 years when I finally left the company. And with that, we end today's video. Let me know what you think about the stories. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate the stories and today's video? I hope you enjoyed the video. If you like what I do and want to support me, please subscribe and hit the like button. I hope you have a great day. Stay safe. Bye bye.